Hello and welcome to our HCI Administrator Training. Thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to go over a little bit of user list specific information. We'll talk about knowledge programs. We'll look through the site, but mostly we're going to be focused on reporting and where to find training information. That'll be the bulk of what we're going to cover today. As I was saying, for this first bit, we're going to look at items that are available to both site administrators and managers. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, that's just as well, because we're going to start here with the user list. I won't waste too much of your time because hopefully you're quite comfortable with this. If you feel very uncomfortable managing your user list or you feel like you have a lot of questions, I highly encourage you to contact support. If nothing else, we can give you more information and answer any questions you might have. But we can always set up a one-on-one call. In fact, that goes for anything that we're covering today. If you have a lot of questions that you feel aren't answered by this, or afterwards, going through the process, you feel you have a lot of questions, please contact support and we'd be happy to set up a call with you to go over things one-on-one. So this is an example of the user list. I just want to go over some common mistakes or some big things that can happen when you're dealing with your user list. For the most part, it should be pretty straightforward. When you hover over your columns, you should get information that helps you fill out those columns. If that formatting is gone, you should still have a tab here, which has that very same information. If you don't have that, you might want to contact support just that way. Anyone handling your user list and looking at the file has that information. Here in line 8, which I have highlighted, this is what it should look like when you inactivate a user. Just want to take a moment to remind everybody that you do need to inactivate users if they're no longer with your company. And you need to inactivate them, not just delete them. The reason for that is the whole reason we have this first column. When your user list is uploaded to the site and those changes are being made, the computer skips any lines where there's not an entry in the first column. As far as it's concerned, those lines don't exist. It doesn't have to make any changes to these accounts. That same rule applies if you simply delete a user from your user list. As far as the computer is concerned, as far as the system is concerned, it doesn't have to make any changes to that account. So what happens if you delete a user from your user list, and they're active at the time you delete them, is they remain active on the site. But then they're no longer on your user list, and that messes with your ability to tell how many active seats you have. And as you know, we only charge you for your active seats. But if you don't have an accurate record of what those are, you might be surprised if you get an invoice for having too many active seats. If at any point you're concerned that your user list has become badly out of date, and you're not sure if it reflects how many users you have, we're always able to pull a new one for you and provide you with that. There's also a quick way that you can check how many users you have active. So let's go back to the site for that. Managers, you won't have this, but since we're talking about the user list, let's go into here. So I'm in the drop-down menu in the top left, Employees, Employee. If we go in here, if you don't put anything into any of the search fields, it should pull your entire list. If I go under more search options, we'll see it's active all. Right now, we're just interested in finding how many active users we have, so we'll change it to yes, and then hit search. This should be a full list of active users for your organization if you're a site administrator. And instead of having to count these lines, just go to Action, Row Count, 27 active users. It's really that simple. So at any time, you can check how many active seats you have on the site. And if you compare this against your user list and the number is different, then that is a good indicator that your user list is out of date and you might want to contact support for a new version. Because you're always going to want the version of your user list that represents what is on the site, not just what you have on file. So that's how it should look to inactivate a user. Activating user, whether they're new or reactivating, is very simple. So this is a new user. We know because it's N for new. If we wanted to reactivate a user, say Oliver had completed his training last year, so I inactivated him to make room for a new user. But now, with a change of a year coming up, he needs to complete more training. So I'm just going to put a C there to indicate to the system that I'm making a change to the account, and change I for inactive to A for active. It's really that simple. And you save that and send that on to support. So that's the really important stuff here. One thing you may not be aware of is this tab here on the bottom that says user list. It should also say user list on your file. This is the only name that is very critical. Please make sure that on the tab that contains all of your user information, that tab is named user list. Moving along, permission role. So permission role is what I was talking about when I mentioned manager or site administrator. A site administrator can, first of all, you can have as many of them as you need. Second of all, they're someone who can see the entire company. They can assign training, they can view training, they can run reports on anyone in the company. A manager can do those same things, but to a smaller group. A manager can only manage those users who are a part of their team, and that team is defined by the user list. That's here in columns H and I. Column H is fairly forgiving, but column I needs to be their exact username. And if we hover over this, it indicates that you should enter the name of the manager, regardless of whether or not that person has an active user. However, if the person is not an active user, please just leave the username column blank. In general, though, since manager is not a required field, there's no need to fill this out unless you have somebody who is not a site administrator but a manager and needs to be able to have oversight of that account. Username. Just make sure to let us know when you send your user list if you're going to change your username. You do have the ability to manually change your username yourself, and I will cover that today. Site administrators have that ability. However, once you change it, you want to make sure that it matches at all times. If you change it on your user list, you can just ask support to change it as well, or just let them know that it's being changed. That'll help prevent any issue with accidentally thinking that it's a new account or errors on your user list. It'll just help the whole upload process go more smoothly if you make sure that support knows that you're changing your username. Name is self-explanatory, email address not required but recommended, especially so that your users can change their password and update their password themselves. Hire date. Hire date is not required, but if you are using the hire date, please make sure that your hire date is not in the future. If you put a user in the future, what happens is they enter a hidden status. So today is November 16th. Let's say I had a user that was starting next Monday. I might think, okay, I'll just go ahead and make their start date the 20th, which is fine, unless I wanted to see them in my list or possibly assign training tomorrow, because tomorrow on the 17th, they're going to be hidden. I won't be able to see them, to assign training or keep track of them until the 20th. However, they do count against your active seats while they're in hidden status. So it's much better just to make the hire date the day that you're adding them to the user list. Job title can be whatever you like. It's not required. Now, business unit levels. Your business units should look something like this. Your business unit level 1 code will be a series of letters relating to your business, and it'll be the same for everyone. You may not be using business units level 2 and 3, but if you are, it should be a code that looks something like this. It may be repetitive, it should not have any spaces, and in most cases it should be uppercase. If your user list has a variety of entries in level 2 or 3 that don't look like that, it may be out of date, and you should contact support to have that updated. And by that I mean they would provide you with a user list that is updated. Last but not least, job classification. The thing to remember about this field is that it's very picky. You can't put whatever you want here. The reason for that is simple. if we have this user who is an occupational therapist, we want to make sure that they get the training for an occupational therapist. And this column is what is used to assign knowledge programs. So if our knowledge program is assigned to only apply to HHOT, and this user is mistakenly entered as HHODT, that person would not get their training. To prevent that from happening, we just don't allow this entry, HHODT, to happen at all. That'll produce an error and it'll be corrected quickly. But for that same reason, we do need you to adhere to the list of job classifications. Now, if as you're looking through this list and trying to apply it to your staff, you feel that it's just not working, we can create custom classifications for you, but we have to work with you to create those. That's not something that can be done purely with the user list. Now, if all of that was repeat information and you feel very comfortable with your user list, I have good news. We do have the ability for you to upload your user list on your own. So if you're very comfortable with your user list and you're interested in uploading your user list on your own, feel free to contact support. We do have a brief training session, and then we can give you access to the user uploader tool. For our advanced users, that might be a good option. So I'm going to move away from the user list now unless there are any questions. I'm going to go back to the site. I want to talk briefly about knowledge programs. We're coming up around the end of the year, so a lot of us are looking at running reports on the knowledge programs. And it's a good time to be thinking about what changes your organization might need to make for next year. We will be reaching out to you at the start of the year if you have any annual compliance training programs with us, just to make sure that those are up to date. At the beginning of the year, we'll also phase out all the 2017 courses and replace them with the 2018 courses. I'm referring to, of course, only those courses that have the year in the title. So for example, here in the training catalog, Abuse and Neglect is one such course. It has 2017 right here in the title. So that's one of our courses that will be updated, and we'll be phasing out this one in favor of the 2018 version. Now looking at the knowledge programs, of course your users can look at it here, and they can get an idea of their own information. But for you, we're going to look at some of the ways that you can run reports on your knowledge programs. One way is through the reports page. And in fact, this is perhaps the most comprehensive way to run a report on knowledge programs. On the left, these are going to give us information course by course. And so while this might be helpful to you, if we're looking specifically at knowledge programs, we're going to want to look on the right-hand side under where it says knowledge programs. My recommended report here is the knowledge programs training requirements detailed. The difference between detailed and summary is that detailed is going to show us course information as well as the knowledge program level. At many places throughout the site, you can get information about the knowledge programs, but it won't list the courses inside of the knowledge program. This one will. All of these reports here on the reports page will have their information on the left. This is what you can edit about the report. This large white space here is actually a preview space. That function might not work the same in all browsers. Right now I am in Google Chrome, and the PDF does have a preview function in Google Chrome. So it's set up to show this calendar year so far. You can absolutely change that. And as we move into January, you more than likely will want to. Once we're in January 2018, this will start in January 2018 and only show 1 month. So to show 2017 program information, you'll have to select January 2017 and move the months to 12. For right now, for this year so far, I'm going to leave it as it is. You have the option to select the knowledge program. It's automatically set to all. So if you need to see all knowledge programs, you certainly can. You can also go in, and if you wanted to see only annual compliance, you can search annual and pull in all your annual compliance. Now this does show previous years. Now, within this date range, they're more than likely not going to show up, but I can give the system a break and just look at this year's annual compliance. Select, continue. You have the option to also separate by business unit. So that's that business unit level 2 and 3. If you're using that, then this is another way that you can subdivide your company and get more specific information. If you want to see everyone, you don't have to open this tab at all. It was automatically set to show your entire company. But if you only want to see one branch, one group, you can certainly do that. So this is the structural aspect of that level 2 and 3. HCI Home Care would be the level 1. Corporate, Home Health, and Hospice would be the level 2. Team 1, Team 2 are examples of a level 3 business unit. That just gives you a better idea of how those work. I'm actually still going to select all. One thing to note here, it is all employees, but it's set to active yes. So if you do have users whose accounts are no longer active, but you need to include them in your report, then you're going to need to change that to all. In employees as well, I do want to point out that in here, under more search options, you see it's automatically set to employees active yes as well. So inside of this, you would also, if you are searching employees, you would need to set this to active. And if you did a search by business unit in here, it's just another way to do exactly what we already did. That active is fine. You don't need to concern yourself with that. But this one would have to be all as well. So just a reminder, when you're searching for those accounts that might be active, might have been closed, you just need to make sure that in all cases where the employee activity is mentioned for your searches, you're not accidentally excluding them by having it set to yes. And in these reports, it usually is. So you'll everywhere that you're doing a search within the reports page, just make sure that you set it to all if those accounts might be closed. I'll run the PDF just so we can take a look at what that looks like. As I said, that does a preview here in Google Chrome. While this is running, you can still move throughout the site and continue looking at other things. And see, I get a pop-up there when my report is ready. So I can go here and I can take a look at it. The PDFs have good formatting. They're already separated user by user. So here we see we have Amy's information first. Page break, we've moved on to Carrie. Page break, we've moved on to Suzanne. We can see the information that we have here. So we have the course names. So these are the courses inside of the knowledge program. So we get the title of the knowledge program as well as the courses and whether or not they're completed. If they're completed, we'll get the date of completion and the grade. So the benefit of these reports is that they can be very, very quick to run. The downside is I can't add any more columns. This is all that this report can show me. So we will look at other ways that you can run reports. This reports page is, of course, available to both managers and site administrators. So for a site administrator, you would be able to run a report on your entire company. Again, managers would only be able to run this report for their team, but they do have access to this report. So that was just the inside of the reports page. I'll show you the process to get there again. From the home page, beneath My Training, My Messages, we have Reports. And then Training Requirements detailed under Knowledge Program was the report that we used. And then I'm going to do it again as comma separated values. This time I'm just going to search for 2017 and search. So we can get a look at what this report looks like as a CSV. The comma separated values CSV file is, of course, a file that you can open with Excel. So it's benefit in the way that you can edit it. You have the ability to remove and to make more formatting choices. However, it doesn't include any page breaks. It's all the same information, but it looks quite different. So if you don't need this information, for example, you might not need the business unit or the job classification or even the employee number as part of this report. You see we have the knowledge program name, then the start and end date for the knowledge program, the course name, whether or not it's completed, its completion date, and the grade. So it's the exact same information that we had before, but it's in an Excel file. Of course, you can always go in and you can always add page breaks on your own or whatever other formatting you feel you need to do. That's just that. While we're here, I want to point out another great report on this page. Certainly I encourage you to go in here and to run these reports on your own if you ever have the time. The great thing about them having so little requirements to run, you can run them without changing any of the parameters. So you can just get a look at what each report does, and you can get a better idea of whether or not it would be useful to you. But this report, Training Record of Employee Training, is also very useful as we approach the end of the year. This report shows course information, whether or not that course is a part of a knowledge program. So for that reason, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it if you're trying to get an idea of whether a knowledge program is completed. It also won't show the knowledge program level at all, so it won't tell you whether or not a course is a part of a knowledge program. It does show all courses, whether they are completed or not, just like that knowledge program report did. You see we have even fewer options here. Again, we have the date range, and again, it is set to the calendar year so far. Employees are all, but active, yes. If we want to see all, we would want to switch it to all. And you can choose again PDF or CSV. We'll do PDF just so we can view it in this screen. Again, it's loading. And again, if I wanted to, I could navigate away from the page during that. But here's an example of this report. Just as before, the PDFs do have a page break between employees. So we see that was still Amy, but we have a little blank space before we start her next page. Oh, there we go. There's the blank space before Darla. So we see all of her courses. We see the course name, start date, due date, end date, status, progress, grade. Get quite a bit of information about her courses. So this might be useful to you. Now, if you are not needing all this information, that would be a time when I would recommend the Excel file. So if you're just trying to get a snapshot of what has been completed versus not completed for your users as the end of the year approaches, this might be a good place to start. And if you need other information that is not a part of this, then you're going to want to look in other locations. I do want to point out that we have a messaging program that's built into the site. It's going to come up here in a moment because your messages can be sent not just from here in the My Messages, and they aren't readable only here. When you send a message, there's an option to send it via email. So let's move on to another one of our reporting places. Let's look at team training. Team training is the manager's way to keep track of their team's training. Pretty straightforward. It starts with a graphic view. Both this and the manager's knowledge program area, the team knowledge program, start with a graphic view. And there's no data until you hit search. If you're a site administrator and you're using this scene, this area, you will need to use this option here. Expand my search to include all employees I can see that do not report to me. That's because, moving back to the user list, a site administrator has access to everyone, but if you're not listed as the manager, they don't report directly to you. And since this is a manager's tool, it is set up for that kind of direct report connection. So the site administrator, you'll just need to check that box there. Then hit search for information to fill in. You do not have to use the graphic view though. even before you hit search, you can scroll to the bottom and use list view. In list view, you notice we have an action button. And here's where the messaging comes in. One of our actions is to send a message. And over here on the left, one of our search options is status. So you can use a very cool tool in here. You can use this to actually remind your staff that they have upcoming assignments or upcoming due dates. So you can select everything that's not completed. You could even select the due date. So let's say due dates anywhere from today to the end of the month. Now, more than likely, there's not anything in that particular search. No. But if I do the end of the year, I might get something. So you put in your due date range. I could then select these users and I can send them a message. I could say upcoming training deadlines. Send them a quick reminder. Please complete. I can hide the recipients from each other so they don't know who else has this upcoming training deadline. As far as they know, they're the only one who has received a message. And it sends a copy directly to their email. And that is the email that's used for their account, the email that would be on the user list. So you can quickly remind your users directly from the site that they have training upcoming. And you can skip some steps of having to export, make a list, find everybody's email. So this team training, this is analogous to the site administrator transcript manager. It's just not quite as powerful. On the left, we have all of our search terms. As with all of our searches, anything that's not entered, you don't have to enter it. You don't have to use any of these search terms. It is automatically set to show this year so far. You can change this, but it does have a date range set. You can search by course. You can do a little term here, a single word, or if you click the caret here, you can look up the exact course. And anywhere you see these square boxes, it means you can select multiple. So you can select all courses, but in that case there was no use using this box. You select one or two, however many you need. You can search by job classification. That is that job classification that's used on the user list in column O. Business unit, again, of course, that's going to be the branches that we were looking at, business unit level 2 and 3. Now, employee. This is one of the ways I actually recommend that you run searches. One thing to remember is that when you're searching for someone, if you're going to use their full name, it has to be a last name, comma, first name. So this account is Amy Administrator, but if I type in Amy Administrator, I'm not going to get anything. If I just type Amy, here she is, and you see that that is the format, Administrator, comma, Amy. Employee number won't always be used, but if it is, it's the exact same as username. That's how we use that. Role typically refers to the learner, manager, site administrator, but if you go in here and you actually look at it, don't be surprised, it will show all of your job classifications as well. So you can actually use either one. However, the job classifications in here are going to have a little more information attached. So you actually will see if there's a manager. So if you wanted to search based on manager, this is actually how you would do that, is using the reports to and finding that manager there. Whereas in this job classification, it's the pure job classification with no additional information attached. Again, just be careful. It is set to only show active users. So I'm going to cancel out of here. And I want to look at some of our other actions. We have Browse Training Catalog. That's very simply going to take you to the training catalog, just the same as if you accessed it from the home page. And we also have Enroll Team Members. So you're probably familiar with enrolling users from the training catalog. It's very straightforward. You can do it one course at a time to multiple users. This Enroll Team Members, however, allows you to enroll multiple users in multiple courses. So these are the 3 users that I already had selected from my search. I can still go in and I can make changes to that list of users. Again, I'm going to recommend that if you want to make changes, you use name because you can use this window again. This window is accessible anywhere where you're searching for users, so it's a good one to become comfortable with. You can also take a little shortcut here, these blue items, the My Direct reports, My Direct and Indirect reports, that's referring again to that aspect of the user list and the 2 ways that you can have oversight of a user. A manager will only have direct reports. A site administrator may have direct reports if they're listed as the manager on the user list, but everyone will be included within their indirect reports. So as a site administrator, if you selected this bottom option, you'd be selecting all users in your company. Then you add courses. You can put as little or as much information here as you like. Our search catalog does all fit in one search, so you can just hit search and that way you're not accidentally excluding. However, if I just select one, I can still go back in as many times as I need to continue adding courses to the list of courses that I am going to assign. The only downside here is that both of these courses I've selected are going to be assigned the same due date. If you're using a due date and you're using this as a single process, there's only one due date for the process, so for the however many courses you're including in this enrollment. Little tip and trick, everyone notices these arrows. Not everyone knows you can just click here, and especially if we're looking at January coming up and you're trying to put a due date of December, it'll be significantly faster to jump ahead to December and then select that end of the year due date. Now I'm just going to pick on Amy Aid and remove these. And then I will enroll her in that course. And it's that simple. Other actions, we looked at send a message. That row count is going to be the very same row count that we use. It just tells you how many lines there are that returned as part of this search. So in this case, it means that there were that number of uncompleted training for my team. Export. So when you see export, this is a reporting option. I'll click this and you'll see what I mean. This list, these are my options for columns to include in my report. They're not organized alphabetically, they're organized by topic, more or less. So the first grouping is employee information, their name, their username, email address. It moves on to business unit information. So if you are trying to include their branch, then you would want to include this. And then it moves on to course information, course name, course code. If you're not currently using Session, Session refers to our ability to track on the site training that doesn't occur on the site. So for example, if you had CPR training that you took twice a year, then we could add that as external training, and those would be sessions of CPR training. So it's something we can track that doesn't relate back to an online course. So if you're not using those, you can feel free to ignore anywhere that mentions sessions. Then we have provider information briefly, but that's still part of the course information. Start date, end date, due date, course. And then a little bit more miscellaneous. So for our report, more than likely you're going to want to have your user's name to differentiate them, the course name, and if we're just keeping it simple, then let's get the status, a start date. We know these are not completed, so there's no point in getting the end date, but we can get the due date. The as of will show the last time the status changed. Let's keep it there for now. Now, when we're reporting from here, there's no option to do a PDF. When we're doing an export, that will always be a CSV file. And here you see we get exactly those columns that I selected. We have those records that were already a part of our search. It's pretty straightforward. But that gives you the ability to take the information that you've searched for, print it, email it, whatever you need to do. And last but not least is print certificates. So managers through this team training activity page do have the ability to print certificates. Now these are incomplete courses, but if I change this to completed courses only, I can get rid of these due dates because it's not important. Hit search again to update my search. Now I can print all these certificates, and I'll show you exactly what that looks like. You can print multiple certificates at one time. What it's going to do is it's going to create a PDF file where each certificate will be a separate page. And then I can take this and print them or email them as I need to. So in addition to your users being able to print their own certificates one at a time, managers and site administrators can print certificates in large batches. And that was team training. Team knowledge program is very similar. It starts with the same graphic view, but we don't have to use it. We can use list view. There's not going to be any information until you hit search. Site administrators will need to click this option here to see things. For managers, they don't need to click that option. It should all be visible when they hit search. We still have the search terms. You see there's still the date range. The search terms are very similar. We can search for the knowledge program. We can use the status, the due date. Expected completion is the terminology for a knowledge program due date, but it's really the same thing. And we have the same employee search options where we can search by job classification, business unit, employee, active, yes or no, or all. And when we hit employee, it's still that same employees I can see window. When we look into our action, there are fewer actions that you can take on a knowledge program. You can still send messages from here. You can still do a row count, and you can still export. So we can still do a report here, but when we do, you'll see exactly what I meant when I was talking about when I told you that the reports page report was more thorough than you could find elsewhere. So I can get employee information, business information if I needed it. I can get the knowledge program name, status, and that's as far as it goes. I don't have any course information. The closest I get are these credits. In this context, credit refers to the courses required to complete the knowledge program. So credits required is the number of total courses in the knowledge program. Received would be the courses which are completed, and remaining would be courses which have not yet been completed. But it's only going to give me a number. It's not going to give me the names of those courses. So when I run this report, I can see how close my users are to completing their knowledge program, but I can't tell exactly what training they've done just by this report. So that's why I pointed you in the direction of the other report at the beginning of this call. All right. While we're here on the home page, Hopefully you all are very familiar with the news sections, and that's how you signed up for this session. But I want to point out contact HCI support. Of course, this is our ticketing system, but we also have this knowledge base. In fact, almost everything that we're covering here today has a knowledge base article. These knowledge base articles are the how to use the site. So how can I send messages to my team on Home Care Institute? We click on this, and there's a PDF. This PDF will have step-by-step instructions, including the images. So if you're a visual person like me, you can see exactly how to go in and send a message. It explains all of your options, and this way you can get a clearer view. So this is great not just for new things, but if you find yourself trying to actually do one of these things that we covered today, but you can't quite remember all of the steps, you can always check the job aids, check in the ticketing system, in our knowledge base, and see if there's something there for you that can help you work through whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. If you're not able to find the job aid or you still are having trouble, feel free to contact support, and you'll already be there in the ticketing system, so it should be pretty easy. Just go back, and you can always submit a ticket. Oops. All right, so we're back to the home page. I want to look at the training catalog briefly. You're probably familiar with it, but I want to point out some of the recent additions that we've had. So these types, you may have noticed that we have a new one. HCI is, of course, our in-house courses that we're solely responsible for, and ITK is a partner of ours, which if you don't know, they provide aid courses. Their aid courses, just like ours, do provide the credits. Any credits for a course will be listed here in the course summary when you click on it from the training catalog. But we also have this HRDQ. DQ is development. So these are leadership courses. They're just good soft skills courses. So especially if you have any users who maybe are staff who are interested in a leadership role or have recently acquired a leadership role and could use a little training for it, then these are a great resource. However, they're not home health and hospice specific. Therefore, when we click in here, you'll see that there are no CNE hours. These are not clinical courses. These are not home health and hospice specific. They're just an enrichment tool for you and your staff, but I highly encourage you to go in there and take a look at them. And if you don't want to add them to your training, just want to point out that you do still have the Preview iCourse option. You can always go in and preview a course. You can see the entire thing without it being added to your transcript. So I'm going to move out of this now. And last but not least, we do have our ITASIC courses, which I just want to point out. These are great beginners courses. These are by far the smallest portion of our library, but they cover a variety of topics, and they're really good intro. They do not offer any credit hours, but these are great for either office staff that just need to have a sort of passing knowledge and understanding of what they're working with, maybe a companion or a volunteer who's not required to have hours. This will just give them good literacy in the terminology so they can understand what's going on in the hospice or in home care if they don't necessarily need a full education on it. Since these are so basic, these probably won't be any new information for your clinical staff, but they're good for people who really have no experience. You see, it covers everything from body mechanics, fall prevention, food safety, a brief cover of HIPAA, and it goes on and on. So it's a really good primer for people who maybe don't have a lot of experience in home care and hospice. Well, we've moved nice and quickly through what I wanted to cover for items which are available to both managers and site administrators. All that's really left for us to cover is the site administrator specific items that are in the menu. As we go over this, I definitely encourage, if there are any managers on the line, for you to stay with us, because you can always ask to be made a site administrator. Like I said, we can have as many site administrators per company as you need. And I just want to give a little reminder for any site administrators who are interested and who are comfortable with their user list, we do have the option for you to upload your own user list. So if you're interested in that, just reach out to support and we can work on that final piece of training and getting you access to that uploader tool. So under training and education, these management tools are very similar to what we've already looked at, but I am going to look at some of the things that are different. So let's start with Knowledge Program Manager because it's a little simpler. There's just not quite as much to it. So just like our Team Knowledge Program page, this page, when you run a report from it, so if I just hit search to pull in everything. Now, on these pages, the site administrator end, you'll notice there's no date range set up. There's not a lot of filters that are here automatically. There's just that active yes. So for a lot of our clients, if you try to hit search to pull in everything, you will actually have too much data for a single search, and you will have to filter it down. But for the purposes of right now, I'm just looking at everything. I'm just going to pull in some random data here. So if we go in here, we go to Action to Export. Just like in that Team Knowledge Program page, I don't have any course information. I just have those credits. And that expected completion, again, is just the due date. So it's going to yield the same information running a report from here. Under Action, in addition to Send Message and Row Count and Export, so we have Change Status. So that brings us to the power of these site administrator specific pages. You want to be very careful and always remember that the records that we keep on our site are the same records that your staff will be sending to any governing bodies or any licensing bodies. So they should be edited with the utmost care. However, you do have the ability on these pages to edit them. The edits you make are final and in some cases virtually irreversible. We can do our best. If something is edited, we can change it back as long as we have a record of what it was before, and we can do historical records for that. If it's deleted, there is some information which will be lost. So you will want to be extremely careful with the delete button. And that's this one right here. This delete button is a complete delete. It deletes all record of the transcript record that you have highlighted. So perhaps best not to delete things if you can avoid it at all. The only reason you would want to delete something would be if something were assigned completely in error. They were never supposed to take this course, so they haven't taken the course, and it's just cluttering up their transcript. Then you can delete it. Other than that, I would recommend not deleting any information. So this change status, you're changing the status of the course. So you could change something from past due, for example. If I want to take one of these that is past due, I could change the status to enrolled. And I don't have to enter these, I don't believe. Nope. There. And now it just won't say past due anymore. It just says enrolled. Another reason you might want to do this is because since your users cannot withdraw themselves from a course, all they can do is to request to withdraw. How does that work? They can go to their training. Let's see, this is past due. So as a user, I could go to this course and I can click the withdraw button. But all I'm actually doing is requesting to withdraw, and I could give whatever my reason is. If, for example, I believed I didn't have to take the course, I could say, I think this doesn't apply to me. And I could request to withdraw. However, that withdraw, or the request to withdraw, doesn't remove it from my training. It doesn't remove it all. See, it just says withdraw requested. And I can still launch that course and take it. And if I go to, oh, we're in the Knowledge Program Manager. But if I went to the Transcript Manager and looked at withdraw requested, now it's going to show up. So that would be another case where you might delete something. For knowledge programs, you're very rarely going to delete them. Though again, if someone had a change to their job classification, even then, if someone has a change to their job classification and their knowledge program changed, this page is not the correct place to make a change to that. So if somebody has basically an out-of-date knowledge program, I'm going to recommend that you contact support and ask them to correct that for you. Because what we want to do in that situation is we want to remove the knowledge program, but not any transcript records for any completed training they may have inside that knowledge program. So to preserve that, I would recommend not deleting the knowledge program yourself, but contacting support and asking them to update it for you. So in addition to the delete, the edit, and the edit of change status inside the action, we also have new. And that is something entirely different. That this is a site administrator specific. So your knowledge programs, for the most part, they should be automatically assigned. They should be automatically assigned based on whatever the qualifications are, whether it's an orientation program and it's assigned upon the creation of the account, or it's an annual compliance and it's assigned based on job classification for the year. But if you, for whatever reason, needed to assign a knowledge program, you can do that with the new knowledge program. All this is actually assigning. You're not creating the knowledge program itself. You select an employee. Notice it's making me select an employee right away, and I can only select one. Now, when you're in these site administrator specific pages, technically you have the ability to create credit. So it's going to give you a lot of options that are not applicable if you're just making an enrollment. So I'm picking my knowledge program and I'll show you what I mean by that. So the start date is the date I'm assigning it, but I have the ability to put in an end date. If I am assigning this knowledge program, meaning it has not yet been completed, I need this person to take these courses and complete the knowledge program, I don't want to put in an end date. The end date will be when they finish this. However, I might want to put an expected completion date. Let's be generous. We're going to give them till the end of January and hope for their sakes that the courses don't get retired before then. And I'm just going to keep it enrolled. But you see in here, if I hit search, I have the option to select any status. But to make an enrollment, just use enrolled. And I would then apply that. Now, Amy already has this particular knowledge program assigned, and it'll let you know if that is the case. But you do have that ability. So that, when I went in there, it made me choose a user. If I go into multiple knowledge programs, it's a bit of a misnomer. Actually, when I go to select knowledge program, I still can only select one. Notice I'm missing my little square boxes. However, I can select more than one employee. I go to add, use my good old name search, and now I can select multiple employees. So if I wanted to assign a single knowledge program to multiple employees, then I would use the create multiple knowledge programs option. And really I'm creating multiple enrollments, but it's all of the same knowledge program, just to different people. Expected completion again is the same as due date. And again, we're going to want to use the current status of enrolled to make an enrollment. These notes are not required. They can be pulled in some reports, but they're certainly not required. And that's really it for the knowledge program page. You'll notice that there are more search options than there were in the manager version of this page. And part of that's just because there's no date range automatically set. A lot of what we're seeing, because it has the exact same employee search options, it already has this selected. Since this is a site administrator specific page, you can deselect it if you only wanted to see your direct reports. But it's automatically going to show you everyone. You can select an exact knowledge program. So if I just wanted to see 2017, I could. We can do the status just the same way as we could before, and then basically all this is the date range option. So I can do that based on the start date, which is the assigned date, the end date if it's completed, or the due date, the expected completion date. And it's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to move away from the Knowledge Program Manager, and I'm going to switch over to the Transcript Manager, which we looked at briefly. We have looked at this a little bit. Again, on the left, we have our options. They're very much the same. As with the Knowledge Program Manager, there's not a date range set up automatically. We can do that. But you'll notice we have some more options here. So we can do type. That is that provider option. So HCI, HRDQ, ITK. We can also do topic. We can do credit type. And so on and so forth. Now, one thing I want to point out here that is unique to this page, to the Transcript Manager page. Instead of doing withdrawal request, I'm going to switch to completed here for a moment. This, again, for the majority of our users, you're going to have too many completed training options for a single search, and you'll probably have to use other search terms to narrow your results. If nothing else, a date range. But under Action, when I go to Export, all the way at the bottom, I have credits. So previously, when we saw the term credits in the Knowledge Program exports, that referred to the number of courses required to complete the Knowledge Program. Here, this credits in the Transcript Manager is referring to CNEs. This is referring to those hours of credit for accreditation. And this is one of the only places on the site that you can include that in a report. So when you run a report from here, you can get an accurate look at how many credits a user has. Now on the downside, there is no sum function built into the reports here. So for example, if I wanted to run a report on Amy and see how many credits she has, it will list out the credits for each course, but then I would have to do a function, I would have to do a formula in Excel to actually get the sum. But you at least have that information available here. Other than that, it is essentially the same information that is available elsewhere on the site. And we see again that we have our powerful new tool, which is an assignment tool. It allows you to create transcripts. We have our edit, our very powerful delete. And let's look at our other actions. So we have approve enrollment. This will not be necessary because we allow all users to enroll themselves in courses. There should not be a case in which users need to request to be enrolled in a course. There's complete. So you can, in one motion, move something to completed. You can withdraw. So if I wanted to look at that request withdrawn course that you saw me go through that process, I could withdraw someone. Now, withdrawing someone, it would remove the course from my to-do list if it were withdrawn. However, that course would still appear on my transcript as withdrawn. So if it is a situation where this course has been assigned in error and you do not want it to appear on the transcript in any way, then you would not actually want to withdraw it, you would want to delete it. We can send messages again from this page. We can row count again. Export, as we said. If you're curious about the export as crosstab, what that's going to do is that's going to basically export all of the options. It's going to export what we see here as the preview. It's going to give me all that. Now, export packaged course data. This packaged course data is the background information of the course. And let's just do a little bit of it. Let's get some of Amy's. Now, since Amy has been given this credit manually, she actually doesn't have as much packaged course data. She's a fake person. She didn't actually take this training. And this is one of those areas where if we have to, oh boy, if we have to recreate a file, or if we have to give manual credit for any reason, this is one of those things that is not a part of that. So launch record, we can see time, we can see, so that's the amount of time that the course is open. We can see the dates and times that these launches took place. This is the kind of information that is lost in a delete. It might not be super critical to you, but that's the kind of information that really can't be replaced. But it is there for you if you want to look at it under the packaged course data. Print certificates. So this is exactly the same as what we saw when we printed those certificates from the manager portion from the team training page. We can print certificates in bulk. And then you have a bulk edit, which I'll just open the page. See, it allows me to enter grade, enter the dates, to mass edit all this information that I pulled in my search. There's really not an occasion where you would need to do that. So that's it for the transcript manager page. Going to move away from that. We're going to look at some back-end stuff now. So that pretty much does it for those pages. They're so similar to what we already covered, there's not much left to say about them. However, we have some really good stuff here in the employees section. One of those is system access. I'm actually going to start at the bottom and look at system access. Team roster, I haven't really covered because it really is just a list of who is under you, who's a part of your team. That goes for it here and the manager version here. It's just a list. There's really not a lot to be done with it. So we're going to start with system access. This is a place where you can reset passwords, you can unlock accounts, and you can have the ability to manage that portion of login. Again, with the name, remember that you want to do, if you're typing in a full name, last name, comma, first name, but you can do any portion of the name. Here, let's look at some of the things that are already set. So before I touch anything, it is set to account locked no. So if you have a user who is complaining that they can't get into their account, and so you've come here to help them, you search for them and you get nothing. It may be the case that their account is locked and that this filter is blocking them. So you would want to change nothing, still have their name there, try searching for them again with account locked yes, and hopefully they would come in. Now hopefully nobody's account is locked. No. Great. But we would just simply, let's pull somebody in to pick on. Anne's not in here. Okay. Oh, whoops. Nobody's account is locked. Here we go. Let's pick on Amy. So we're going to pick on her. You can see her information. We can see that she can log on. Her account is not locked. We can see that she has a temporary password assigned already. It means she has not logged in since she got her password assigned in December 15, 2016. So not an active account, but it's counted as active. But we can go into action. Right here, we could very quickly unlock her account were it locked. We can lock it if we want to, though there's really no reason to do that, since locked accounts are not the same as inactive. Locked account, if account is locked but active, it's still counting as an active seat. It just means that for whatever reason they can't log on. That's the status that happens when somebody attempts to log on with an incorrect password too many times. So there's really no reason for you to manually lock an account. You can assign a temporary password. And this is actually where we recommend that you do this from, because you have two options here. You can do a system-generated password, in which case you can send it to them in an email or print it. So you get a CSV file that you could print. Either way, and it'll just be a random series of letters and numbers. But if you're not going to be seeing that user in person to hand them the printed version, or if they don't have access to their email, then you're not going to want to do the random series of letters and numbers because there's no way to communicate that to them. In that case, you would definitely want to do this. Use the following password for all employees. And you could choose something that was very simple for them to understand and remember just for their one-time logon. So support, for example, always uses password lowercase. And you could do that for your staff as well. And you could just tell them, just use password. And again, that's a temporary password, so they would use it one time and reset their password when they log on. And you just hit assign now to finish that. Very straightforward. And you can always row count and export, though there's not a lot of data here. And that's system access. Now, I want to move up the employees to employee. This is a great page if you're just trying to get an overview of a single user. Again, you should be able to hit search and see everyone. It is set to all, so if you just wanted to see active, you would want to switch that. Always hit search to refresh. And if you change your search terms, I can click into a single user and I can see their information. So now this page, if you needed to change someone's username, this is how you would do it. You would go in through employee, find the user, and then under this system access, this is where you change the username. Notice it's grayed out and I cannot interact with it. I can interact with that, but I can't interact with the username. With this being such a critical piece, that's there so you can't accidentally change the username. But if we go in here, it opens another page. And now I could edit the username if I wanted. Again, just remember that if you are editing the username, make sure you immediately update on the user list as well. We can update their email address. You do have the ability to assign a temporary password here, but you only have the option to do the random series of letters and numbers. And if someone's account were locked, then it would be like this when we went in. We could unlock it. So you do have some of that ability of what we just looked at here. But this is the only place where you can change the username. You can see their roles. You want to avoid editing things over in here too much. This is very important. This is the information that the user list makes for you, and just only edit it via the user list. Don't think too much about it down there. You also do not want to delete people, because we are required to hold on to these accounts, even if they're inactive. We're required to hold on to them and onto their records, so they really cannot be deleted. And in general, you should avoid editing them here. It can create a lot of problems, because a lot of what we normally do is a multi-step process, and the edits here tend to be single process and skip things and create a bit of a mess in their wake. This is really just a place to look at things. For example, we can look at the transcript. You can click on the columns here to sort. You can even search. You do have the option to go into new, and that's the same thing as if we were going into the create transcripts from the transcript manager, except for this is going to already have selected this user. But you see it's the exact same page as the create transcript that we had in the transcript manager. You do have the ability to edit. Again, that is the powerful edit and that is the powerful delete, so be very careful. You do have the ability to export from here, so you could create a transcript report of just this user. You can also look at their knowledge programs. It's going to be very surface level here. We don't even have an export. But if we click into this training, then we can see those exact knowledge programs. It's a bit hard though. It's a bit cramped. There's a lot of information for one page. So it's still usually better to run a report on the knowledge programs than attempt to see it from this page. While we're here, I do want to point out another way we can see some of that back-end data. So when I go in here, just to look at the information for this course, we see the basic, we see the start, end, due date, we see status history as well on this tab here. I can actually tell when this was enrolled, when it was completed. It says it's manual credit. I could, if this were completed normally, I'd be able to see when it was launched. If I go into packaged course, this would have that packaged course data, very similar to what we saw in the report that I ran previously. It also shows the credits. So you can get an overview of that information there, but it's not easy to create a report with it from there. It's just a good way to go in and take a look. But if you have a user who is having an issue, you can always get an overview and just see what's going on with their account, see what's going on with their transcript by looking at it here. And our actions from here are really just we can send messages. We can do that row count, which I showed you before is useful for seeing how many active users you have. And we can do an export. So you can always pull user information. But this is that same information that should already be on your user list. I'll take a moment just to point out, we do have a Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If you would like to follow us on any of the social media, we'll periodically post job aids and updates on what's going on with the platform. You can follow us on any of those for updates and more information. And if there are no questions, then that will end our administrator training for today. Thank you all for joining us. If you do have any questions at any point, feel free to contact support. You can always email us at support@homecareinstitute.com, or you can contact us through the ticketing system. We'll be happy to help you. That includes if you have a lot of questions or anything you're really struggling with, I'd be happy to set up a one-on-one call to go over that with you at any time.